Hey everybody, Anna Sabramowitz here, and today I'm going to be talking about interactive storytelling, how to seed an idea. What? What is that? Well, first, here it is. We're going to talk about this awesome mechanic today in the context of an interactive story. Now, I'm going to show you how to use this. It's a very awesome way to plant ideas, hence the seed an idea mechanic, into your learners' minds about how to think about some situations and how to use this strategically so that you can actually give them more feedback without them feeling like it's real feedback, right? Okay, so before I get into it, let me make sure that everybody's invited here. So if you're here visiting, just say hi. I love hearing from you. And also, if you have questions, guess what? I love seeing those too. Some people have some awesome questions because they're crafting their own interactive stories. So let me make sure that I bring up your comments. So yeah, I'm a little bit later today because we just had basically a Q&A session for my coaching program, the Interactive Storytelling Accelerator, and had quite a few projects to review before our session this morning. So that's what we do. We look at projects and deconstruct them and see how we can make them better. Hello, David. Hello, Chantal. So wonderful to have you here. Okay, fabulous. So, hi, Valentina. Before I go into this, if you are really interested in how to make an interactive story, how to, how to make this process work for you, and how to leverage this tool to influence, inspire, motivate people into action and behavior change, go to elearningsecrets.com. There you'll find a case study, walks you through the entire process. But the past 2 weeks, what I've been doing is I've been taking because not everybody gets a chance to work with me in my coaching program to craft their own interactive story. But I thought that shouldn't stop you, because if you watch my daily live videos, I will give you a strategy and a mechanic that we use to craft powerful interactive stories, and the mechanics are a big part of this. When you think about an interactive story, and I always like to put this in context, so hopefully you all can see it. An interactive story is meant to get somebody from a place of unawareness, of not being interested in your topic, of not caring about it in any way, and move them towards this fabulous place where they're like, hey, I think I'm ready to step outside of my comfort zone. Hey, I think that, actually taking up this training, this sales training, I could actually become a salesperson just like Jim did in his thing. I mean, I'm not Jim, but if Jim can do it, maybe I could do it too, right? Jim had some things holding him back. I don't have the same things, or maybe I do, but I wonder if this would work for me too, right? You're trying to get people enabled. This is solving that problem of motivation. And a lot of people suffer with that, right? They lack motivation. It's not that they don't want to do a good job. It's that they don't even know where to get started. They don't see a potential. There's beliefs that hold them back. And that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to persuade them to take on the first steps, jump into that LMS, take that first course, That's what we're trying to do with our interactive story. Now, this is what's really cool too. An interactive story is meant to persuade people of something, right? It's made to persuade them to believe something new, something different, something they haven't thought of before. And so a lot of times what we do is we'll use feedback to kind of give some guidance, right? Like in our scenarios, what happens is we have them make a decision, and then people after they make those decisions, they get a consequence, right? And the consequence, usually, if you crafted it right, the consequence is very powerful, and the consequence is enough of a lesson for most adult learners to make them at least reflect that something is not the way they expected, or it did turn out the way they expected, but the consequence is supposed to be the exact effect of the decision that they've made, right? So we're trying to make that relationship between cause and effect explicit here. But one of the things you can also do is to help people frame how they're going to think about those consequences and the results of those consequences. And that's where seeding an idea comes in. Okay, so let me bring that up. Oh no, I didn't use a sticky. Where is it? By the way, if you are interested in other mechanics the past 2 weeks, basically every single day, I've been recording a video on a different mechanic that you can use inside your interactive stories. Now, we build our interactive stories with Articulate Storyline and 360 because it's super powerful. Love the review features. You can use any tools for this, but if you're an Articulate Storyline developer, all of these is built in Storyline, and it's possible in that software. I am saying that because I got that question yesterday, and it was a great question. So seeding an idea. So this is so cool, this is so sneaky, and this is so strategic, right? Because let's just be real. Everything that we're doing is we're trying to persuade people how to think. We're not trying to create a simulation where they get to see other alternatives and where they're practicing just for the sake of practice because they're, internally motivated to learn their gaps. What we're trying to do with an interactive story is to move people from a place of really not thinking about things the right way, like believing that they're not good at sales, or believing that some people are innately, better leaders than others, or some people have better common sense than they do. We're trying to get them to think about things in a certain way. So how do you do that without going, without explicitly saying, here's some feedback, because they know the feedback's there and they're, how can we sneak it in and be very strategic with it? So one of the ways to do that is when you have your scenario, right? People make a decision. Based on that decision, you create a callback, seed an idea. We call this when you're tracking your choices and what you're doing, you call it an event flag, right? So this event flag gets attached to the choice that you've chosen, and obviously the consequence, let's say, that results from choosing this one. Now what happens is you could leave this as at the consequence, right? But you could do something else. Instead of just having the character in your story experience the consequences of the decisions that have been made, you can also have them reflect on this consequence as the next thing. And what you're saying here is very strategic. It's very much the feedback you would have given them, but it's said in that person's voice. So this character is now reflecting on what happened, saying, I wonder if I could have handled that better. I wonder if my reaction was the right one, or so what you're doing here is you're starting to kind of infiltrate the narrative, right? That the thoughts they're thinking in their mind, but you're planting some ideas about, if they didn't necessarily get that the consequence wasn't as bad as they should have thought, or maybe they think that all the consequences are out of their control. But here you can reinforce it and say, maybe if my approach was different, I could have saved that sale. I wonder. Or maybe I reacted too soon, right? So that inner dialogue that we want them to have after these bad situations, that's where you place it here. And this is what's really cool, because this is the reflection moment, right? But what you're doing is you are, in a way, making sure that this reflective idea that they get to see here is very much linked to the kind of decision that they made. And this is how this gets pretty awesome and sneaky. Because if you think about an interactive story, the goal of our interactive story is to get somebody in a trance that they relate to the character. They're rooting for them. They're excited to make the next decision. They're invested, right? This is huge. And so what happens is, if you're crafting this story, most of your pearls, most of your scenarios with decisions are going to be in a linear fashion. And there's a reason you're doing this, right? Because if you start like creating some sort of a simulation, which is not an interactive story, it's a different kind of beast used in a different place. If you branch too much, then what happens? If you have a branch that goes off each of the scenarios, you dilute your story. But the thing is, your story is a powerful message, and we're trying to bring them along, right? We're Pixar. We really are. We're trying to bring them along to this beautiful conclusion over here. But in the middle, what we're allowing them to do is, even though this is your story, you're telling it, this is a character story, and there's a journey here. Within this, they get to make decisions and suffer those consequences, right? And some of those decisions are, and I've mentioned this in other when I discussed other mechanics, some of those decisions will lead to an early exit. Some of them will lead to a detrimental outcome earlier on, right? Check out things like Karma Meter and A Wonderful Failure if you're interested in that. But what's cool is that when I make a decision within this pearl, I, as the learner, get to feel like I'm controlling the story because I get to see the consequences, and that seeding an idea, because I'm tagging it, what I can do is then I can attach it to the scenario seamlessly, to this next scenario that begins. And therefore, this next scenario can begin with that character reflecting on the last one. So it kind of creates this continuity within the story, and it makes me feel like I, as the learner, am crafting the story, that I'm directing it, even though it is, regardless of what happens here and the consequences that I have, we're still going to go to this next decision. This next event is still going to happen. But now you've kind of customized it, right? And there's nothing wrong with us now, these event flags that I've mentioned that we're using to track what kind of decisions people are making. We're also going to potentially use these as markers later on when we're giving the personalized feedback in the modular epilogue. So look that up. But basically the modular epilogue is when we give people a feedback at the very end of our story, but it's very specific to the decisions that they've made in each one. And if you do it right, the modular epilogue is actually a way to reinforce some of those ideas. It makes them think back to the decisions that they made and the lessons that they've had. So this is really cool because you can imagine this. They're going through the story, right? In each pearl, you have a consequence, which is a lesson. After each one of those consequences, you have a reflective seed and idea moment, which is another way for you to reinforce some good thinking, right? So that's number 2, another lesson. At the very end, you can have the modular epilogue, which what it does is it brings back all those resources and says, these are decisions that you've made. Here's what you should be thinking. So really, they get 3 ways, 3-or interactive story to get that lesson, and you're very much structuring how you want them to think about it, and you're overcoming those false beliefs. You're getting them to think about things in a different way. But if you use all of these strategies, you're doing that 3 times for every single situation, and it's not even taking them out of the story, which is brilliant because you don't want to jar people out of it going, yeah, that's right, you got it right, Jim should have done that. Nobody gets omnipotent feedback in the middle of their story. It ruins it, takes them out of that awesome experience and that trance that they're in, because they're in a story, right? It's kind of like, getting lost in a great book. You don't want to all of a sudden it's like, imagine going to the movie theater and having a commercial every 5 minutes. You'd be pissed off, right? Because it takes you out of it. Yes, it does. So consider your feedback that way. Is how can I put this in here in a way that will not take them out of the story, feel natural, not feel like it's being dictated. And at the end, you can give them feedback because they're probably expecting it. But in here, you can do that seed the idea strategy. And it's totally awesome because you're guiding what you want them to think, even though it's the character saying it. So it's sneaky, it's awesome, it works. And if you want to see a great example of that, check out Broken Coworker. We're using all of these strategies that I shared with you here are actually being used in a Broken Coworker interactive story. So you can go through it. First time, you probably won't really notice it because you're immersed in the story, but later on, you'll actually see some of these strategies, actually all of them, being used. Some of them are on the back end, some of them are on the front end, right? So I hope you found that helpful. Thanks. By the way, I just want to say, thank you so much for being here. I know that this is your Friday, probably, for some of you Saturday, and I know you have tons of other places that you could be, but the fact that you want to be here and you want to learn about this awesome strategy called interactive storytelling, I really appreciate that because I absolutely love talking about it and I absolutely love sharing my lessons with you. So it's wonderful to have you here. Now, after you heard me talk about this, if you have any questions about launching your own interactive story, please post them underneath the video. If you want to learn more about interactive storytelling and my journey and just how you can use this for yourself and probably launch one in the next 6 weeks if you wanted to, go to elearningsecrets.com. I have a case study there that kind of outlines basically the entire process. It doesn't get into the mechanics like I do here because it's a bigger overview with more examples. But then you can see that, see my live sessions, and then you can piece together what you need to make your next interactive story happen. You're welcome, David. That's great. Glad to have you here. So if you guys have any questions, let me know. Also, if you like these videos, make sure you like them, or you, I know, just so that basically what happens is next time, what will happen is you'll get a notification that I'm coming live. And next week we'll of course be talking more about interactive stories, because that's what I do. But if you have any questions, post them underneath and I will be able to address them next week. All right. Have a wonderful weekend, my friends, and stay healthy. All right. Take care. Thanks for being here. Bye.